The rails screamed like a dying animal. Dust jumped from the ties as the locomotive tore through the canyon, smoke rolling black. Cade Mercer rode the ridge beside it, hat brim pinned to his brow, rope coiled in his hand. Ahead, the track bent toward a washed-out curve. One more mile and iron would meet air. Cade nudged his mare. Easy, girl. Close and clean. The horse found gear. Grit cut his eyes. The train's heartbeat thudded. Pistons, rods, a metal chest that would not slow. Cade saw no one in the cab. No fireman waving. No human shape at all. He rose in the stirrups, threw the loop, and felt rope bite iron. The first yank almost tore him from the saddle. He set his jaw, kicked free, and swung into space. Boots found the ladder. His mare peeled off and kept pace, smart as a dog, waiting for his whistle. Cade climbed to the footplate. Steam scalded his coat. He grabbed the Johnson bar, hauled it back, then leaned on the brake. The handle fought him like a stubborn mule. Steel shrieked. Sparks rained. His teeth rattled until he thought they'd jump from his skull. Inches before the bad curve, the big wheels locked and slid. The whole beast shuddered, coughed, and settled. Silence fell in chunks, first the rails, then the canyon, then Cade's own blood in his ears. He let out a breath he'd been holding since boyhood. Who's running this thing? He called into the cab. A conductor's cap appeared in the door. It tilted with tidy care like a man saluting a timetable. The face beneath it was wrong in the way a scarecrow's smile is wrong. Shiny brass jaw, glassy eyes, cheek plates scratched by years of wind and cinders. When it spoke, the voice came soft and measured like a hymn through a church whistle. Schedule observed, it said. Delay logged. Cade stared, every rule he knew turning sideways. You're no man. The figure nodded once. Gears ticked in its throat. I am designated Whistlejack. The route must be completed. Below them, river water licked at the broken bank. The curve waited like a sprung trap. Cade looked from the ruin to the brass face and felt a choice now settle on his shoulders like a saddle he could not refuse. Cade kept one hand on the brake while he eased into the cab. Heat breathed from the firebox, sweet with coal and oil. Gauges trembled like nervous birds. The brass man stood straight, hat level, hands at the controls with patient stillness. You saw that curve, Cade said. Another yard and we were kindling. Risk noted, the conductor answered. Wheels in his jaw spun, then clicked quietly. Resumption required. Schedule is duty. Cade looked out at the river gnawing on the bank. Duty's fine. Suicide ain't. He scanned the levers, the water sight, and the whistle cord. The machine kept tidy order, like a church organ. A tag riveted beside the throttle read Prime. Deliver freight. Second. Preserve schedule. Tertiary. Safeguard crew, if not in conflict. What freight? Cade asked. Sealed coach, said the brass man. Manifest locked. Cade moved back through the tender, boots crunching coal, then to the first coach. A fresh red wax seal bore the rail crest. He slid a knife under it and pushed inside. Crates were strapped floor to ceiling. Paper dust hung in the stale air. He pried a crate. Inside lay bundles of deeds, mortgages, and water claims tied with cotton string. Names he knew were scrawled: Thatcher Malloy, the preacher. Another box held a small hand pump and brass fittings. Not freight. A town on paper. Cade set the lid back. Hair rose on his arms. An accident would turn all this to ash. No papers, no rights. Dry Butte would be easy pickings for a man with lawyers and nerve. He returned to the cab. The conductor watched with glass eyes that did not blink. Whistlejack, Cade said. Who told you to run at that broken bridge? Orders are threaded, Jack said. He slid a stiff card from a tin sleeve. Holes punched in a neat grid. Route established by cards. Orders hold while intact. He replaced the card with a pastor's care. How long to dusk? Cade asked. The conductor raised his pocket watch, enamel cracked, second hand steady. 90 minutes. Departure overdue by 9. Then hear me, Cade said low. We're changing this run. Levs first. Gears clicked as if weighing his words. Conflict identified, Jack said. Awaiting directive. Sun slid lower, copper on stone. Cade felt the clock bite. Ahead, a whistle post waited to force full speed. He would need tools, a card punch, and a way to fool signals. Cade moved fast. He told Jack to hold pressure and keep a hand on the brake. Then he crossed the tender again, boot slipping on coal. The mail car door stuck, then gave with a groan. Inside, sacks and crates swayed on leather straps. He cut one sack. Envelopes spilled like snow. He looked for names he knew. Dry Butte, Dry Creek, Double Antler Ranch, even the little school. He found a ledger bound in cracked brown hide. Columns marched in neat ink, payments, payouts, dates close to today. Names beside them, surveyors, a bridge crew, a man called H. Dime with a note, powder. At the bottom of a sheet, the name Silas Vane stood alone like a dare. Cade whistled once, short. His mare answered outside. He flipped more pages and found a stamp. Switch House, Mesa Cut. Under it sat a receipt for railmen paid to test levers at dusk. He shut the book and kept moving. A wooden chest was bolted to the floor under a tarp. He pried the hasp and lifted the lid. Tools lay in tidy rows. A card punch, spare cogs, an oil tin, blank route cards. A rule plate rested on top. Prime, deliver freight. Second, preserve schedule. Tertiary, safeguard crew, if not in conflict. He ran a thumb over the plate. If not in conflict, he muttered. There's the trap, the floor trembled. From downline, a faint whistle spoke a code. Long, long, short. Jack called from the cab. Signal received. Next box request maximum throttle. Cade grabbed the punch, 2 blank cards, and the ledger. He shoved them in his coat. He shut the chest and kicked the lid to seat it. Then he climbed back to the cab. Jack's glass eyes turned. Orders persist, he said. Route pressure rising. We will answer, Cade said, but on our words. He set the punch on the sill and showed Jack the blank card. I know a little about machines. They obey the holes they are given. Jack watched, still as a clock. Directive clarity is duty. Good, Cade said. Then let us write a new duty. He looked out at the canyon. Sun slid lower. The broken trestle waited like a mouth. Hold her steady, he said. I'll make us a path. Wind scraped the cab. Coal grit ticked on his teeth. Somewhere a hawk cried, thin and far, like a warning. Jack eased the throttle enough to keep steam but not speed. Cade set the blank card on the windowsill and the punch beside it. The tool felt heavy like a small iron book with teeth. He studied the old card that ruled Jack now. Rows of square holes like a lattice. And traced the pattern with a finger until he saw the trick in it. Your rules are stacked, he said. Freight first, time second, lives last. That's backward for any man with a heart. I do not possess a heart, Jack said, polite as a clerk. I possess a regulator. Then we'll teach your regulator a decent order. Cade held the blank next to the current card. He marked 2 squares with a coal nub. If I swap these, he said, prime becomes life. Schedule slides down. Freight waits its turn. Jack's gears ticked. Tamper may void warranty. Friend, Cade said, your maker is not riding this line. He pressed the punch and felt the clean bite. Chaff fell like black snow. He turned the card, checked the holes again, and pressed once more. The new pattern looked simple and honest. He slid it into his coat and left the old one on the sill. Outside, the canyon narrowed. Ahead, the white letter P on a post warned of the whistle box that would call for full power. On the ridge, Cade's mare kept pace, ears pricked for his sign. Beyond the bend rose the little switch house at Mesa Cut, where levers could throw a town to its knees. We'll need that spur, Cade said. Is there a maintenance track before the trestle? Jack's head clicked a quarter turn. Affirmative. A service spur diverges 1 mile prior. Manual throw at the switch, locked. We unlock it, Cade said, and make noise like we're obeying. He practiced on the whistle rope, long, short, then long, short to mimic the box's demand. He could fake compliance long enough to put townsfolk in the window. Resume on my say, Cade told Jack. Slow roll. Resumption acknowledged, Jack answered. Steam breathed. The wheels nudged, iron ringing like a spoon on a church bell. Cade leaned out and gave his mare a soft whistle. She dropped behind, ready to fetch help if he jumped. He tapped the pocket with the new card and felt time press the cloth like a living thing. Sun dropped, steady as law. Steam wrapped the cab like breath on a cold morning. Cade took the ledger from his coat and tore out one page with names and payouts. He wrote on the margin with a dull pencil. Marshall Calder, meet us at Mesa Cut Switch House at dusk. Bring townsfolk. Vane plans a wreck. He folded the paper tightly. He leaned out and whistled for his mare. She swung close to the tender, smart and steady. Cade tied the note to her bridle and scratched her cheek. Home, girl. Find the marshal. He clucked his tongue. The mare leapt off the grade and cut across the scrub toward Dry Butte, tail flagged like a signal. Asset deployed? Jack asked. Messenger sent, Cade said. He tucked the ledger under the seat where it would not blow. Now we make this engine look obedient. Jack's glass eyes faced forward. Whistlebox ahead will request maximum speed. I'll answer for us. Cade took the whistle cord. He listened for the wind first, then gave a long short. The canyon threw the sound back in rough echoes. A second later, from downline, the box replied. A bell inside the cab chimed once. A little governor spun faster. Throttle increase required, Jack said. Ease it, Cade told him. Half only. We show willing, not blind. Jack nudged the lever. The big wheels gripped. The train rolled slow at first, then smoother. Heat rolled under the roof. Smoke trailed low, hugging the cut. They passed a herder on the ridge. He pulled off his hat and stared, then began to run his pony toward town. Good. News was riding faster than iron. Cade checked the sight glass and the brake vacuum. He oiled a sticky rod with Jack's can, fingers quick and sure. You were kept tidy, he said. Who cares for you? Depot man in Waycross, Jack said. Repairs once per quarter. Polite hands. Good oil. The word polite came out like comfort. You like polite? Cade asked, almost smiling. It reduces error. Me too. Cade's smile faded. But today we must invite a little disorder. Understood. Jack's head clicked. Disorder with purpose. They slid past a white-painted milepost. Cade saw the paint flash and knew the spur was close. He leaned out and looked for the switch target, a red blade at rest on the main. Beyond it, the small wooden house stood on a shelf of rock. Two men waited by the door with rifles held lazily, like hands that had practiced harm. Cade blew a long, short, obedient music. The men straightened. One ducked inside. Showtime, Cade said. Hold at 15. Be ready on the break. The switch house sat above the rails like a roost. Wind tugged at its tar paper roof. Cade judged the distance, the speed, and the slope of the ballast. 15 miles an hour felt fast when death was one lever away. Brake on my shout, he told Jack. If I stumble, count to 5, then pull hard. Acknowledged, Jack said. Cade stepped to the running board and tested his boots. He wrapped one fist in the grab bar and practiced the jump in his mind. Down to the ground, 2 strides onto the platform, through the door before the rifle could find his ribs. He set his jaw. Now he dropped. Ballast rolled under his heels like marbles. He caught himself with a palm, skinned it, and kept moving. The train slid past his shoulder, warm and loud. He hit the platform low. A rifle clacked. Cade drove his shoulder into the door. Hinges screamed. He went through with the splinters. Inside, lamplight painted a small room. Levers with red and blue handles. A table with cards and a sandwich. A clock. And 2 men with surprise still soft on their faces. The nearest snatched at his rifle. Cade swept it away with his forearm, shoved the man into the wall, and drove his elbow into the other's gut. Air left the man in a woof. Cade planted his boots and looked for the lock bar. There, a steel hasp with a padlock is chained around the main lever. The key hung on a hook 3 feet away, polite as Sunday. Cade snatched it, turned it once, and kicked the padlock toward the corner. Outside, the whistle box cried for speed. Cade yanked the red handle for the spur. The floor shook as points shifted on the rail. He threw the blue to close the main. The clock ticked loudly. One man recovered enough to swing. Cade ducked, felt the fist graze his hat brim, and answered with a short, straight punch. The man sagged. The other grabbed the sandwich knife. Cade lifted the lever bar and rapped his knuckles. The knife rang to the floor. He ran to the window and waved his hat. Jack's glass eyes met him across the gap. Cade spread 2 fingers, easy. The train obeyed, wheels singing. On the ridge beyond, dust tails rose, riders coming fast from Dry Butte. Good. The town had heard. Tusk was coming on. Cade shoved a chair under the switch house door and tied the 2 men with their own belt straps. Lie still. You picked the wrong job, he said. He leaned out the window. The point sat right for the spur, the main line closed. Good. He waved once more to Jack, then listened. The whistle box downline called again. Long, long, short. Hungry for speed. Cade answered with the same pattern. Like telling a skittish horse it was fine. Hoofbeats rose on the ridge. Marshal Calder came first. A cluster of townsfolk behind him. The storeman, the teacher, 2 ranch hands, a woman with a shawl tight. Calder lifted his hat as he reined in. Mercer, he called. You pulled a wild one. What's this about a wreck? Cade held up the ledger page through the window. Vane paid for powder, survey lies, and a lever pull at dusk. That trestle is meant to fall with a train on it. Dry Butte's papers are in that sealed coach. Calder read fast, jaw tight. You sure? I am, Cade said. And I'd rather be wrong than bury children. The woman with the shawl spoke. My boy's name is on those deeds. Don't let them burn. I'm trying, ma'am. Cade looked across to the cab. Jack stood steady, hands exact on the controls, a figure made of duty. Cade called to him. You holding? Pressure maintained. Brakes ready, Jack replied. Calder eyed the brass face and swore under his breath. What in creation is that? Conductor, Cade said. Polite and trapped. Calder nodded once, swallowing shock so he could work. All right. We'll hold here. If Vane rides in, I'll see his hands. You get that engine to the spur. Cade touched the window frame. The wood was warm from the lamp. For a breath, he felt the hush that comes before a choice. He spoke low, mostly to himself. Laws, Inc. Justice is the backbone. He stepped onto the platform, then down to the ballast. The train matched his pace like a patient animal. He grabbed the rail and swung onto the running board. The whistle box cried again, sharper now. From the far cut, dust lifted, 3 riders pounding hard. Cade saw a black coat and a wide hat in the middle. Silas Vane was coming to watch his timetable hold. Easy, Jack, Cade said. Spur in 1 minute. Then we write new orders. The train nosed toward the split in the rails. Cade watched the switch target. Red blade lined for the spur, glow dull in the falling light. The smell of hot metal and creosote filled his nose. He wiped coal grit from his palms and set the new card on the sill. Jack, he said, listen closely. In a few breaths, the signal will call for full speed. You will feel the order as a weight. Do not answer it. Hold steady. Jack's eyes twitched to him. Orders require obedience, not when they kill. We'll trade the order you trust for one that saves. Gears hummed like a low hymn. Present card is signed. Then we sign a better one. The whistle box wailed. Long, long, short, sharp as a knife sliding from a sheath. A bell inside the cab snapped twice. The little governor spun hard. Jack's hand rose by habit toward the throttle. Hold, Cade said. Jack froze, hand trembling a fraction. Steam feathered from a valve like a breath held too long. Conflict increasing, Jack said. Schedule demands. Bridge integrity is doubtful. Crew safety tertiary. Cade lifted the new card. He held it beside the old as if showing a scared horse a rope. See this pattern? It makes life prime. Schedule drops. Freight waits. Same frame. No panic, Jack's glass eyes flicked between cards. Pattern recognized. Change requires punch approval. I am the punch, Cade said. He gave a quick smile that didn't reach his eyes. On my count, ease the brake. We'll kiss the spur nicely. Then we fit you a right heart. From the ridge came a shout. Riders fanned along the shelf above the switch house. Vane pulled up where all could witness. He raised an arm like a man calling for a toast. A fourth rider clattered down the service path toward the lever door, pistol drawn. Marshal Calder stepped out, badge catching the light. "Hands where I can see 'em," he called. Behind him, townsfolk spread, faces tight with fear and hope. "Now," Cade said. Jack eased the brake. The wheels squealed softly, then took the spur as smoothly as stepping off a porch. The car couplings bumped once. Wood groaned. The sealed coach shivered but held. Cade reached for the old card. His fingers shook more than he liked. He slid it out fast. The engine lurched, feeling the gap like a skipped heartbeat. Cade pushed the new card in until it clicked. Jack's gears stumbled, tick-tick, then found a steady pace. "Reading," he breathed. "Read quick," Cade said. "Dusk does not wait." Jack's head tilted, the cap brim casting a shadow across his glass eyes. Inside his chest, small wheels spun, slowed, spun again. The cab felt like a church where someone had asked a hard question and the organ was thinking how to answer. "Parsing," Jack said. "Prime directive alteration detected. Cross-check required." The whistle box cried once more. The bell snapped. A linkage at the throttle twitched as if an invisible hand tugged it open. Cade slammed his palm on the bar and held it down. "Not yet," he said. "You don't rush a safe change." "Warning," Jack breathed. "Schedule pressure rising." "Then let it rise," Cade said. They rolled deeper onto the service spur. Rush brushed the steps. Ahead, a small siding opened like a pocket under the cliff. If they could stop there, the trestle would be behind them, useless to a plan written in greed. Gunfire cracked near the switch house. Cade looked back. Marshal Calder stood square, revolver low but ready. The pistol rider had reached the platform and now froze with the townsfolk's rifles on him. Across the ridge, Silas Vane sat his horse like a man at a desk, eyes cold. Vane raised a brass box the size of a book. He held it up high so all could see. He thumbed a plunger with lazy care. The ridge folk murmured. Calder's jaw set. Cade cupped his hands. "Drop it, Vane." Wind took his words and threw them back in tatters. Jack's gears clicked faster. "Checksum failsafe requires confirmation punch," he said. "Two holes differ from manifest." Cade grabbed the punch. "Tell me where." Jack tapped a square with one jointed finger. "Swap here with here. It will elevate lives without tripping the lockout." "Hold steady," Cade said. He fitted the teeth, lined them with the tiny squares, and pressed. The punch bit clean. He turned the card and made the matching hole neat and exact. Chaff drifted like pepper. Jack slid the card fully home. His chest wheels spun and then settled into a rhythm like breath. "Directive accepted," he said. "Prime, safeguard lives. Second, deliver freight. Tertiary, preserve schedule." The whistle box screamed for the last time. Jack looked at Cade. "Order conflicts. Awaiting choice." "Choose people," Cade said. Jack nodded once. "Choosing life." He eased the throttle closed and reached for the brake. The siding lay ahead like a hand in the dark. Jack set the brake a hair tighter. The siding bent under the cliff like a safe pocket, but the spur ended at a wooden bumper not far ahead. If they rolled too hard, they would split the timbers and jump the stop. Too soft, the last car would foul the switch. "Feather it," Cade said. "Let the caboose clear the points." "Feathering," Jack answered. His hands moved with careful grace. Steam hissed like someone letting out a long-held breath. The couplings chirped. The sealed coach rocked once and settled. Cade leaned out to watch the switch target. The blade stayed red for the spur. Good. Beyond it, the main line gleamed toward the trestle, thin as a lie stretched too far. On the ridge, Silas Vane lifted the brass box again. He pressed the plunger. Far down the line, a small cough of dust jumped from the trestle, just a test bite. The crowd flinched. The woman with the shawl cried out and then covered her mouth. Marshal Calder faced Vane. "You drop that toy now," he called. "You light that bridge with folks watching and you'll hang for it." Vane smiled like a banker hearing a joke he did not plan to pay for. Marshall, an unfortunate failure is what it is. The schedule demands. The law follows. Cade cupped his hands. Town's deeds are in this train, Vane. We moved to the spur. Your schedule is broken. Vane's eyes thinned. He lowered the box and spoke to the rider at his side. The man kicked his horse toward the switch house. Another rider slid down the service path at a crouch, trying to stay below the look of the crowd. Cade turned to Jack. Listen. If the box sings again, you do not answer. If they throw the main, you dump steam and lock the drivers. You hold to life. Instruction stored, Jack said. He touched the new card with a careful finger, the way a person might touch a medal. Prime life. Right. Cade grabbed the rail. I'll help hold those levers. He ran low along the running board, dropped to the ballast, and climbed the platform. Inside the house, the Tide men swore but stayed put. Cade checked the red and blue handles, spurs still set. He slid the bolt bar in place to block the main. Outside, hooves drummed. Calder's people spread, muskets and old Colts steady. The air smelled of dust and train heat. Cade saw a thin wire snaking from the ridge down the cut, disappearing toward the trestle like a snake in tall grass. He felt the prickle of a new danger. Wire, he said under his breath. He's set for the big charge. Cade crouched by the window, eyes on the thin wire that slid away toward the trestle. It lay half buried in grit, glinting like a snake's back when the sun found it. He traced its path with his gaze and felt how small a finger Vane had to move to take a town's breath. Marshal Calder stepped in behind him. The room smelled of lamp oil and hot dust. You figure that wire goes to the big charge? I do, Cade said. He can drop that bridge whether we ride or not. Calder rubbed his jaw. Then why set a wreck? Because paper burns better with a story, Cade said. A wreck makes the law look away from the man who planned it. The woman with the shawl stood in the doorway, hands tight on the frame. My boy's deed, will it hold? Cade spoke softly. Paper's a promise. A promise needs a spine. We're the spine today. She nodded once and backed away, face fierce now instead of scared. Calder looked at Cade's skinned palm. You always jump trains for folks you barely know? Cade let out a small breath. Sometimes a mess finds a man who knows the tools. I don't ask if it's mine. Calder's eyes eased. Law's glad of the help. Cade looked out at the engine. Jack stood in profile, hands poised, smoke feathering from the stack. For a moment the heat and clatter faded. Cade felt the quiet that comes before a vow. He spoke low, a plain line shaped like a nail. Right done slow is still right. Right done late is wrong. He met Calder's look. We finish this right and fast. Agreed. A shout rose on the ridge. Vane's rider reached the platform below with a pistol high. Calder swung his arm. Drop it! 4 townsmen leveled their rifles. The rider froze and let the gun fall. It hit the boards with a flat knock. Cade squeezed the whistle cord once, short, so Jack would know he was still there. Jack tipped his cap a fraction like a nod. Hold your people steady, Cade told Calder. If Vane runs that plunger, we need witnesses, not heroes tripping wires. Calder went to the door. You heard him, eyes open, fingers easy. Wind slid through the cut, cooler now with evening. Cade listened to the rails sing in the heat and thought of the town's names stacked in that coach like seeds in a sack. He set his hand on the red lever and waited for the next test. Wind shifted in the cut, sudden and sharp. It came down the canyon like a broom and kicked dust into the air. A grit cloud rolled across the tracks and swallowed the switch house window. Cade coughed once and wiped his eyes with his sleeve. A spark lifted from the engine stack, rode the gust and fell into the brush near the wire. It found dry grass and made a tiny blue flame. The flame licked once, then twice, then ran along the ground like a fox on a fence line. Fire, Cade said. Calder saw it at the same breath. Bucket line, he shouted. 2 men ran to the river path. The woman with the shawl grabbed a shovel and began to beat the edge of the flame. Others stomped with boots. But the wind was a partner to the blaze and pushed it toward the thin wire like it wanted a friend. Cade looked to the cab. Jack, can you throw wet steam? Jack turned one valve and then another. A white fog poured from the side, hot and damp. It billowed low and rolled over the brush near the siding, slowing the fire there. Cade pointed farther, where the wire ran. More reach! Jack cracked the blowdown. A louder wash of steam blasted out and bent the flames back from the ties. The smell turned sharp and clean like rain on hot iron. Vane stood on the ridge, coat whipping. He watched the fight with cool eyes. Then he raised the brass box again and tapped the plunger half down like a cat teasing a mouse. Far downline, the trestle threw a puff of dust as another small charge went off. The crowd gasped. Calder lifted his pistol and aimed at Vane's arm. Don't, Cade said. We need him holding that box in front of witnesses. Calder lowered the gun, jaw tight. Work the fire. I'll work the men. Cade jumped from the platform and ran along the ballast to the burning patch. He hauled brush back with his bare hands and shoved dirt over the base with his boot heel. The woman with the shawl shoved the shovel into his hands. Dig a break, she said, teeth set. They cut a line in the dirt. Steam rolled across them in breaths. Sweat stung Cade's skinned palm, but he kept at it, thinking of names on paper and the pump in the crate. The fire hit its brakes and slowed. A gust tried to lift it. Jack answered with another white cloud. The flame lay down like a whipped thing and went to smoke. Cade straightened, chest hot, eyes wet from steam. He looked at the wire. It still ran unbroken into the dusk. We held it, he said. Now we cut the snake. Cade trotted along the ballast, eyes on the wire. It dipped into weeds, climbed a rock, then slid toward the trestle like a black string. He tested it with the back of his knuckles, no hum. Good. Still, a bad wire bites when a fool hurries. Keep folks back, he called to Calder. If this jumps, I want space. He took the shovel the woman had given him, set the dry wooden handle under the wire and levered it up onto a flat stone. Then he pulled his belt free and wrapped it twice around his palm so the leather would hold. He took the sandwich knife from the switch table, wiped it on his sleeve and looked at the cliff. Vane watched like the game was his. Jack, Cade shouted. Give me a short whistle on my mark, loud. Standing by. Jack answered. Cade raised the knife. Mark. Jack blew one sharp note. The crowd flinched and looked up. In that breath, Cade chopped the wire against the stone. A spark popped. The cut ends curled and lay still. On the ridge, Vane's smile thinned. He pressed his plunger. Nothing moved. He pressed again harder. Still nothing. He looked down the line, surprised for the first time. Calder lifted his badge and his voice. Drop that box, Vane. Folks can see what you meant to do. Vane lowered the plunger slowly, then tossed the brass unit to a rider. He pointed at the switch house, eyes cold. The rider spurred for the stairs. Cade slid the knife into his boot and ran up the platform. He checked the levers, spur held, main closed. The tied men stared with a mix of fear and hate. Cade ignored them and looked to the cab. Jack, how's our breath?
Boiler steady.
Brakes holding. Night in 30 minutes, good. We'll park her tight and do this in the open. Dust lifted on the ridge. More riders gathered behind Vane. Men with clean coats and soft hands, the kind who paid others to get dirty. Dry Butte folk drew closer, shoulder to shoulder now. Cade laid the ledger page on the window ledge to show the names. He spoke. This is the story. We tell it clean. Then we end it clean. Vane rose in his stirrups like a judge about to speak. Throw the main, he called. The rider lunged for the lever door. Cade met the rider at the door. The man hit the jamb with his shoulder. Cade turned, let him pass, and hooked a boot behind his heel. The rider stumbled, face first into the wall. Cade took the pistol, broke the gate with his thumb, and tossed the rounds to the floor like seeds. You're done, he said. Sit. The man slid down and sat, wind gone. A shot from the ridge punched a splinter out of the window frame. Cade flattened. Calder fired once in answer. The rifle on the ridge went quiet. Outside, Vane's voice carried. Throw the main. He pointed with two fingers, bored and angry, like a boss telling a clerk to fetch coffee. Cade lifted the lever bar and dropped it, locking the red handle again. Not today, he leaned out. Jack, give me long, short. Make it sound like we obey. Jack tugged the cord. The whistle sang the lie. Echoes ran around the canyon. Vane smiled thinly and cruelly. Good. Push them through, he told his men. Townsfolk shifted but did not break. The woman with the shawl stood with her chin up, shovel held like a staff. Calder walked his horse 2 steps forward until his knee touched Vane's stirrup. Not another inch, the marshal said. Cade looked at the engine. Ease ahead 2 car lengths, he called. Slow as prayer. Stop clear of the points. Understood, Jack said. The couplings clucked. Iron knocked softly. The train crept. Breath held. Cade stepped out and trotted along the platform to watch the wheels. He kept one palm on the lever bar. A slick hand slid up the stairs. A crowbar hooked the bolt. Back off, Cade warned. The hand kept pulling. Wood squealed. 2 of Vane's men leaned into the steel, faces red with effort. The bolt inched. Cade swung the lever bar once hard and knocked the crowbar free. It clanged and fell. The men cursed. On the ridge, Vane saw time slipping away. He jerked the reins, wheeled his horse down the path, and leaped from the saddle at the platform. He grabbed the main handle with both hands and heaved. Wood cried. The locked bar shuddered. The blade on the target twitched. Jack! Cade shouted. Be ready! If that throws, dump steam and lock the drivers. Dusk settled. Rails hummed like a held note. The lever moved a finger. Then it stuck. Vane's teeth showed in a hard line. He leaned on the main handle with all his weight. The locked bar groaned. Cade braced his boots and shoved back. For a breath, they were 2 men holding one bone between wolves. Let go. Vane hissed. Rail takes what rail needs. Not today, Cade said. Vane drove an elbow into Cade's ribs. Pain flashed white. The handle jumped a thumb's width. Outside, the target blade quivered. A low murmur rolled through the crowd. The woman with the shawl stepped closer, eyes bright and angry. Marshal Calder swung down from his horse and climbed the steps. He held his pistol low, not pointing, but solid. Silas Vane, he said in a voice that filled the small room. You're under arrest for attempted murder and conspiracy to destroy the trestle. Step away from that lever, Vane laughed once, short and ugly. You can't arrest a schedule, he said. You're a small man with a tin star in a poor town. He heaved again. The bolt slid a breath. Cade felt the handle creep in his palm. Jack, he called. Be ready. If the blade turns, you choose life. From the cab, Jack answered, steady, almost gentle. Prime life. I hear you. Cade shoved his shoulder under the handle and lifted, not with arms, but with back and legs. Wood bit his coat. Vane snarled and tried to gouge Cade's eyes. Calder caught Vane's wrist and twisted. The brass detonator box clinked in Vane's pocket. Calder ripped it free and tossed it to a ranch hand. Hold that high, he ordered. The hand raised it for all to see. Calder met the ridge with his voice. You all witnessed this. Ledger says he paid for powder. Here is his trigger. The wire is cut. He came to throw this switch by force. Heads nodded, slow and grim. Vane saw the town harden against him. Fear flickered, then anger burned hotter. He drove his boot into Cade's knee. Cade dropped a fraction. The bolt slipped one more notch. The target blade began to swing. Cade tasted iron in his mouth. He thought of names in the coach. He thought of water in the pump. He thought of how the law is ink and justice is the backbone. He set his jaw and pushed. The lever moved a finger back, then stuck again. Vane bellowed and slammed his shoulder into it with a last, ugly effort. Something inside the lock snapped. The red blade started to turn. The red blade kept turning. Metal squealed. Cade felt the lever slip in his hands. Vane grinned like a wolf with a bone. Jack, Cade yelled. From the cab came a calm reply. Choosing life, Jack dumped steam. A white wall roared from the engine, hot and loud. He set the air hard. He dropped the sanders so grit poured under the wheels. Drivers locked. Iron screamed. The train shuddered and settled, heavy as a bull sitting down. The switch target twitched farther toward the main. If it finished the throw under a standing car, the steel would twist and jump. Cade shoved the lever back with everything he had left. It moved a thumb. Vane hammered his shoulder into it. The bar in the lock barked. Wood split. The blade edged again. Back her an inch, Cade shouted. I obey life, Jack said. He cracked the reverse, eased the throttle a breath, and let the train creep backward just enough to clear the points. Steam fog swallowed the ground. The couplings ticked. Cade felt the handle ease as the pressure on the switch lightened. He heaved. The lever slammed home for the spur. The target snapped red again. Vane went wild. He clawed at Cade's face. Calder caught him around the chest and dragged him off the handle. The crowd below saw it all. The box in Vane's pocket, the wire on the ground, the lever he had tried to throw. On the ridge, one of Vane's men panicked and yanked a second plunger from a saddlebag. He slammed it down. Far down the line, the trestle belched a low, rolling boom. A section folded like a card table. Dust rose in a brown sheet. The river took splintered beams and spun them away. People cried out, not from loss, but from the proof. The bridge had fallen with no train near it. Calder pinned Vane's arms. You saw that, he called to the town. He meant to put us on that. Faces turned hard. The woman with the shawl lifted the detonator high. Caught, she said, voice clear. Cade leaned on the frame, chest heaving. He looked at the brass face in the cab. Jack's glass eyes met his. Prime holds? Cade asked. Prime holds, Jack answered softly. Lives first, the steam drifted. Evening lay a copper hand on the rails. The worst of the clock had passed, but the end was not finished. Paper still waited. So did cuffs. Marshal Calder snapped iron cuffs on Vane's wrists. The metal clicked shut with a sound that felt like a door closing on a bad chapter. Vane tried to yank free. Calder's grip did not move. You'll answer in front of the town, the marshal said. No back rooms. No papers passed in the dark. Cade wiped steam from his face with his sleeve. He looked up to the ridge. The riders who had come with Vane sat stiff and unsure, like men who had followed a boss and now saw only a thief. One by one, they backed their horses away from the edge. Jack, Cade called. Hold her right here. I am steady, Jack replied. Prime remains life. Cade jumped down and climbed to the sealed coach. He cut the wax with his pocket knife. The door groaned open. Townsfolk pressed closer, careful, hungry for truth like hungry for bread. Cade lifted the first crate, pried the lid, and pulled free a bundle of deeds tied with a string. He held the top paper up where all could see. Thatcher family deed, he read. Signed and stamped. He passed it to the woman with the shawl. Her hands trembled. She took a breath, then stood taller as if a long rope had been cut from her shoulders. He opened more crates. Water claims, mortgages, the small hand pump wrapped in burlap, brass fittings bright even in the low light. Your town, he said simply. All here. Calder raised his voice. Dry Butte, listen up. We're taking these papers to the square. We'll set a table. We'll count them out by name. We'll fix records properly. A ranch hand called back, who keeps them safe now? Calder nodded toward Cade, then to Jack, then to the crowd. We do, all of us. Today we say it plain. The townsfolk murmured, not in fear this time, but in agreement. The teacher stepped forward with a ledger book of her own. I'll help record, she said. Clean lines. No tricks. Cade felt the wind shift cooler against his sweat. He looked at Jack in the cab, brass face soft in the dusk. You did fine, he said. You chose right. Jack touched the new card with a gentle finger. You wrote the road I could walk. Cade glanced at Calder. Marshal, you'll need hands. Deputies for a day. Calder smiled a little. For a day and as long as it takes. He faced the crowd. Who stands for Dry Butte? Hands went up. Rough, soft, small, and old. In that simple lift, the town named itself Us. The crowd began to move as one. Calder signaled 2 ranch hands to lead Vane's horse. The cuffs flashed dull in the low light. People did not jeer. They simply made space and watched him pass, the way you watch a storm finally roll away. Cade and Jack worked the engine gently. Cade called for a small push. Jack eased the throttle like he was carrying a sleeping child. They drew the cars past the switch house, cleared the points, and set the handbrake tight. The siding held them safe under the cliff. "Can you give us water for the buckets?" Cade asked. Jack opened a valve. Warm water spilled into a wash tub someone had set on the ballast. Folks washed soot from their hands and faces. A little boy splashed and laughed. The sound broke the tension like birdsong after thunder. The woman with the shawl hugged her deed to her chest. "My boy will sleep easier," she said to Cade. "Maybe I will too." "You will," Cade said. "Sleep like a clean conscience." The teacher organized papers on the platform. Names were called. Hands reached. Strings untied. Each bundle returned felt like a nail set straight in a fence. A few men quietly put cash on the ledger for the burned grass and torn door. No one argued the amount. Calder held up the brass detonator box so the last rough light found it. "This will ride to the judge," he said. "With the ledger and the wire and what we saw." Eyes nodded. Truth had weight now, not just words. Cade walked to the engine and laid a palm on the warm steel. "Jack," he said, "how do you feel about staying put a while? That little pump in the coach wants a home. The town could use your pressure and your patience." Jack's glass eyes blinked, a tiny movement that somehow looked human. "A station without departure," he said softly. "I can learn that." "Good." Cade smiled with one side of his mouth. "A well is just a train that never leaves." A simple meal appeared from nowhere. Biscuits, jerky, and a jar of late peaches. Someone passed a tin cup to Cade. He ate standing, steam at his back, dust settling at his boots. The canyon felt different, emptied of fear, filled with plans. "Tomorrow," Calder said, joining him, "we'll haul these cars to the square and set that pump. Tonight we watch." "Watching's part of building," Cade said. "Fence holds because someone looks." Lanterns hung along the siding like a new string of stars. People settled into small circles. Some guarded the switch house. Some stacked brush away from the wire. Someone nailed the hasp straight and set the door true. After a while, talk grew easier, and the canyon took a warmer breath. Cade walked the length of the cars once more, hand on steel, eyes steady. He checked the brake pawls, the couplers, and the sight glass. Habit was his prayer. When his loop was done, he climbed to the cab. Jack stood there quietly, polished by steam and dusk. "You chose well," Cade said. "I chose as you wrote," Jack answered. But the choosing felt like a weight moved. That's the feel of right. Cade took the card punch from his coat and placed it on the sill. Next to it, he set a single blank card. He stared at its clean squares the way a farmer studies a field. "Tomorrow," he said, "we make a last card for you, no roots. Only keep and serve." Jack touched the blank with a careful finger. "A home order." "Exactly." Down below, Calder spoke with the teacher and two ranch hands. He turned, raised his voice, and made it public. "Dry Butte, hear me. We swear by simple things. By our hats, our tools, our names. Tonight we swear to stand for each other. We keep papers clean. We fix what breaks. We don't look away when a man like Vane tries a trick. If you agree, light your lantern and say us." One by one, flames bloomed. The word moved like a small river. Us. Even the quiet ones said it. The sound was not loud, but it carried. Cade felt the word find a place inside him. He did not check often. He looked at the town and then at Jack. "That's your station now." "A good station," Jack said. The woman with the shawl came to the cab step and held up a folded ribbon. "For luck," she said. "My boy outgrew it. Tie it where you like." Cade tied it on the whistle cord. The little strip fluttered in the steam like a bright bird. He smiled, small, surprised. Night settled clean. Coyotes called far off. The rails, at last, were only rails. Cade leaned back against warm iron and let himself believe tomorrow could start honestly for Dry Butte folks. Dawn came slowly and kindly. Cade rolled his shoulders, feeling the ache of work that mattered. The town stirred, coffee on stoves, boots on boards, a baby crying once, then quiet. He climbed down from the cab and met Marshal Calder by the sealed coach. "Let's finish," Cade said. They set a table from planks and sawhorses. The teacher opened her ledger. Papers came out by name, each one read clean. People touched the pump in its crate. Jack stood watching, hands folded as if he had taken a pew. When the last deed found a home, Cade held up the blank card. "One more job," he told Jack. Jack stepped close. Cade fitted the punch and made a small, careful pattern. He tapped the chaff away and read the line he had written in holes. Prime, keep live. Second, serve water. Tertiary, stand watch. He slid the card into Jack's chest slot. Gears turned like a quiet hymn. Jack bowed his head a fraction. "Order received," Cade smiled. "No more routes." "Then let this be my stop," Jack said. They moved the engine to the square at a walking pace. Town hands set the pump, bolted the fittings, and ran pipe from the tender to a stone trough. Jack eased pressure. Water arched clear as glass and cold as a mountain stream. Children shouted. A ranch dog barked at its own reflection and then drank like a king. Calder faced the crowd. "By witness of this town," he said, "Silas Vane stands charged. The judge will see proof. Until then he sits in our cell, same as any man." No one cheered. They just nodded and got back to building, which was louder. Cade packed his coil and checked his saddle. The woman with the shawl came with her boy and a basket of biscuits. "For the road," she said. Cade tipped his hat. "For home, when you get there." He put one boot in the stirrup and paused. He looked at Jack at the pump at the square that already felt steadier. "Dry butte," he said. "Hold to each other." "We will," the town answered. Cade swung up. He rode for the canyon mouth while the morning light took the steel shine and turned it gentle. Folks say the pump still beats steady, because a cowboy and a clockwork man rewrote a timetable into a home. Like, subscribe, and comment, break the orders, or keep the timetable.